So let's turn over to Jussie Weber, an attorney and a host with the Law and Crime Network. Thanks for being here, Jussie.
Thanks for having me.
Given what we know now, given the details that came out in the press conference today from police, do prosecutors have an open and shut case here?
I don't think there's anything called an open and shut case, but what I think that they have based upon it is a very strong case that, in their opinion, they hold him dead to rights. I mean, what we learned today was really interesting details about how they tracked him and those two brothers for a period of time. It's one thing to take these two brothers' word for it, but backed it up with a copy of the check that he allegedly paid to them, backed up by surveillance footage. They clearly think they have a strong enough case to at least go forward with an indictment and later on a trial.
Yeah, the momentum seems to be swinging now against Smollett after that, what we heard initially. So he's hired Mark Garagos, who's represented many high-profile celebrities, Michael Jackson's, Colin Kaepernick's. How do we expect his defense team, Smollett's defense team, to handle this now, considering some of the overwhelming evidence that you mentioned is sort of against him now?
It's hard to know because they haven't given a lot of information. At the very beginning, they said that it's how can you dare say that he made this up? They seem to be changing a little bit. They want to do their own investigation. What it seems to be they're saying is the first tack that they're going to say is criticizing the police department. There are all these leaks. How can we trust anything that happened? What you also imagine they'll do is if this ever gets to a trial, they'll attack the two brothers. You're basing all of your information on these two witnesses now who were first suspects. How can you believe anything? And also the fact that the attack itself wasn't captured on camera. The superintendent mentioned the fact that would have helped Jussie Smollett's case, saying, hey, look, I was attacked. The other way of looking at it, no, it might have helped his case because if nothing's captured on camera, it's his word against theirs.
Right. We don't know what happened, right? Let's play a clip here from Smollett's interview with ABC when he was still at that point considered a victim. Take a listen here.
He said, this MAGA country punches me right in the face. So I punched his ass back. I noticed the rope around my neck and I started screaming. I'm pissed off. How do you not believe that? It's the truth.
What? Now, police appear to have debunked what was said there in that interview. Is that interview evidence? I mean, could it become problematic for Smollett moving forward, or is what he said to police later on more important?
It's problematic for a lot of ways. Well, first of all, it shows that he's a very good actor. But I'll tell you one thing it does show. First of all, it could be used at a trial to show this is a crime of him saying that he falsified something, because it could just him continuing that pattern. But the more important way is if he's ultimately convicted and before he's sentenced, remember, this is a Class 4 felony he was charged with, carries 1 to 3 years. This might be introduced to evidence and say he kept continuing this on. He lied to the American public in front of all these cameras, and yet he kept doing it. So if you're going to make an example of somebody, you got to make an example of him.
You mentioned the possible punishment that he could be facing, 1 to 3 years in jail. You think he's going to see some jail time?
I do. I do.
You do.
I think that this is a very serious crime that we don't see a lot of, or at least not in the public sphere. And falsifying a police report, which is classified under disorderly conduct, the superintendent said, well, it takes resources away, and it diminishes the real victims of hate crimes, especially a guy who has a platform like this, to make this public in such a way. If you are going to hold somebody responsible and exhibit prison time, it's going to be in this kind of case.
You mentioned the brothers who were, sort of involved in this, right? Who he hired to attack. Are they witnesses? Or could they be held to account here? What's going on with that?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because during the press conference, they were classified as victims, that they were manipulated by this man because they could have faced their own legal jeopardy by them. They have now been classified as witnesses, which means they will be crucial to a trial against Smollett and just the further investigation about who knew what. There was even a question that was directed to the superintendent about, did his manager know something about this? So it's still being investigated about who knew what and who was a part of it. But for Jussie Smollett, it's not looking so good.
Jussie Weber breaking down the legal ins and outs of this very unusual case.
That's for something.
Thanks, Jussie.